Hi, everybody. How you doing? Welcome back. Hello. Can we take a seat? We're going to start the second half, the end half, the end bit. Okay. How's everybody doing? Good? Good, productive day so far? Okay, cool. Well, we're going to close. I'm here. My name's Danny Oliver, by the way, if I don't know any of you guys. I run communications and design at LA Stage Alliance. And I'm up here to introduce our first speaker of the last session of the day. His name is Maestro Gamin, and he's a poet. Every year, LA Stage Alliance, we like to sit down and talk about what we expect out of LA Stage Day and what we're really looking for. And we always come back to this two same words, which is inspiration and community. And I think those words get repeated a lot during the day at LA Stage Day. So this year we thought it would be really amazing if we could bring on an artist to come communicate those two things, but in a different creative way, instead of sort of from an administrative lens. So this is our foray into bringing an artist up here to perform for you guys. His name is Maestro Gamin. He's an LA-based poet. He's a member of the LA Poetry Collective, the Women Group, and is also associated with the Vibrations Writers Workshop in Inglewood. He's also a friend of mine, so please give a warm welcome to Maestro Gamin.
This is about community. Gray fog, parking lot, and flaming Cheeto bag sky. Red, blues, blacks in bold shapes, edged rough, letters scrawled angry, defiant, beautiful, appear from nowhere out of a violent secret night. You learn walls don't belong to you. Horns bouncing in alleys drown out yells to windows high above the street. You learn silence doesn't belong to you. This is where everything touches you, you best let it. Roosters cackle through hot air madness, giving back nothing about where they come from. This street has people, overflowing every Friday, feeding themselves full of what life here tastes of and how it chews and swallows, sets low in the belly and under the heart. Homeless scavenge for bottles before noon. Children walk through parking lots, hand in larger hand. And city workers brush aside cardstock flyers, glossy with DJ, with band, hungover from the night before. $10 covers promise the magic is always different each week, and the show never grows stale. Girls, young girls looking for someone to love them as much as they love themselves. Boys, looking for gamble, guzzle courage to beat their chest into the weekend. This alley has young, has dumb, has drunk, has stupid, has life, screaming out and sometimes peeing, particularly here. Most nights you're on your own, but your own is yours. Find your way or go back where you were. 'Cause the streets are too old with bars that hold souls like sentences from past lives that live through Chavez, through Zoot Suit, through riot, through injunction and funeral, through old neighbors and new faces, through 15s and councilmen, through picnics and clean shirt cowboys with hands like God, through straight-faced blessings and fat bosom sunshine staining your life straight through, purifying with hope and prayer, giving strength for generations preparing for their own turn, moving ahead forward. You feel these are the stories that have weight. Here is where you begin to carry them. They may hold you down, help place your step, crossing currents turbulent. Wherever you take them, after is up to you. They may lend grace through ugly and desperate to make the man in the mouse suit stay magic a little longer, or the girl in the dress smile in the sun, or the old woman pulling wool through working week for little hands that grab and reach out toward a way into the world. These neighbors, these lives rub elbows and shoulders on the street, pushing into their next number on the to-do list. And I feel fleshy arm and tiny shoes step into me. I excuse myself and make myself smaller. I smell the bakery, the wet rain in the street, see the old man who stares at me with his entire life. I hear the woman asking me to buy flowers in Spanish, The high waists walking as if they know the world belongs to them for now. The young men desperate for success and more desperate to have it their way and know they can't have it both ways and live as great as they think they are. The insane who have failed and not died. The old men who are fat and who wander days like and ask when this stopped being the neighborhood they grew up in, playing catch-up with the look of childhood in their eyes. The artists and artsy, both struggling for recognition and mutual destruction, and me, writing about all of it.
Hi. Jesus. All right. I am here to introduce a very dear friend of mine. Her name is Karen Foster. A number of you may know her. She is from Los Angeles originally. I met her many, many years ago when we went to school together in New York. And then after we got out of school, she moved back here to Los Angeles. And we started a theater company when I moved out here in 1994 called Oasis. All right! We have a fan! That's right. Can we have your email address, please? Please. Because someday we may want to produce again under whatever the 99C plan is. Who knows? I lie. So we did that. She actually also worked for a previous incarnation of LA Stage Alliance called Theater LA back in the day. She did her undergrad at UCLA. And at some point after that, after working at Theater LA and doing our theater company, she decided she was going to make some money. And she went over to the ASK Theater Projects and worked there with helping develop new plays. She then parlayed that into a job at Disney in the animation group working in development. And then from there was poached by DreamWorks Animation. She's now, I think she's producing animated stuff, but also now live action things for DreamWorks again. In fact, next week is going off to London to do something with Shrek there. So she's got an interesting sort of story, I think, to tell. And one of the reasons that I wanted to bring her in and speak is with all the changes that are going on in the LA theatrical community, to talk about sort of resilience and change and these kinds of things and opportunity in identifying them. I think she'd be a great person to talk to about that. So Karen Foster from DreamWorks Animation.
You should all move down. Hi, I find myself surprised to be here at a theater conference, so forgive me if I don't know everything that's going on. But I think it might be an interesting time to talk about resilience and improvisation in Los Angeles due to the fact that obviously the equity rules are changing and there's a lot of brouhaha about what's going on with the 99-seat theater and an East Coast organization telling the West Coast what to do. So I'm from LA, and all I ever wanted was a life in the theater. And that life in the theater always meant East Coast. And I used to come downtown and I would pretend that downtown Los Angeles was a big city. I'd look at the two big buildings like this and pretend there were more. My first job here was at the LA Theater Center, which was an organization that some of you may know about. But anyway, it was in the 80s. And it was built downtown on Spring Street. And we thought we were going to revitalize downtown Los Angeles and make it everything that it is today, except that 20 years ago it wasn't going to happen. So that dream didn't happen. And I thought, oh my God, I need to be in the theater and I have to make my dream live. And so I auditioned for Juilliard, not intending to get in. I just wanted to be able to stand here as a 50-year-old and say I'd tried. But accidentally I got in and I met Mark Doerr. And I was a really great, good girl. I followed all the rules. I was a very good student. And I graduated, and I followed the rule of waiting for the phone to ring, because that's what good Juilliard actors did. And I waited for a long time for the phone to ring, and it never effing rang. I mean, it just didn't ring, and I spent a lot of time depressed. And waiting tables in New York City. And pretty soon it became clear that my dream of a life in the East Coast establishment theater was just not going to happen. So I came back to LA, I ran back into the arms of my friends, and luckily some of my friends from Juilliard also came with me, i.e. Mark Dorr. And at some point, while I was working at Theater LA, by the way, as the receptionist, just now the LA Theater Alliance, I found out that there was a grant to be had through the Juilliard School of $10,000, and I thought, I am going to do everything I can to get that goddamn money, because I have given them a lot of money and now I want some of it back. So Mark and I and a couple of other friends got together and we spent a long time, months actually, preparing this grant. We had never written a grant before. All we had ever done before is wait for the phone to ring. And we wanted our grant to look better than just we're 4 desperate actors wanting to get this $10,000. So my life of obeying the rules and doing exactly everything right began to end and crumble at this moment because I wanted that money. And we invented a whole year of experience for this theater company that didn't exist yet. And we started writing newsletters and sending them across the country to the Juilliard mailing list with events that never happened. And we took pictures of ourselves doing things. And we basically made up a year of history for this theater company. And then later, when the theater company was actually a real theater company, there was always an extra year that we had to remember that we were actually founded in 1993, not 1994, whatever year it was. We got that grant, and we actually had the audacity to call the organization that gave us the grant, it was the Fox Foundation, and say thank you, which apparently had never been done before. So note to everybody, if you get a grant, call them, because apparently this doesn't happen. And we applied the following year again, and even though Juilliard didn't want us to get it because we got it the year before, the Fox Foundation liked us so much because we said thank you, and we got it again. So we were an actual theater company, and we continued to break rules. We lied our way into a Shakespeare festival by calling ourselves a Shakespeare company, and whenever we applied for a grant, we'd say, well, what's their mission statement? And then we'd go, well, that's our mission statement. We just rewrote it, but we've got a new mission statement. And the other thing we tried to do is always make our grants funny, because we know they're really boring and people have to read them. So we thought if we were funny, then maybe they'd remember us, and they did. And then around this time, and I'm telling you all this stuff just to say, I have been resilient, and I have broken rules. So one of the things that we also did was, around this time I was now working at ASK Theater Projects. I had quit Theater LA because I was earning minimum wage, which is a thing these days, I hear. I was pretty much depressed because I was now a theater administrator and I wasn't an actor anymore. And I was feeling the real need for some inspiration. And a few years before, I remembered I had this boyfriend that was in an Anne Bogart play up at Saratoga, and I knew that there was this school there for a couple of weeks, and maybe it was some memory of the boyfriend, I don't know, but I thought, I really want to take that class, but I don't have any money, and I can't possibly take 2 weeks off of work to go take this workshop in Saratoga. Well, it just so happens that one of my colleagues knew Anne Bogart and told me that they were hard up for money. So my early producer said, we'll call them up and find out how much money it would take to get them to come to Los Angeles. So we did, and he calls me back and he says, well, it would take $30,000. So I said, okay, well, that means that we would need 100 students and we'd have to charge $300. So tell them we're gonna bring them out here. And then I called Mark Dorr and I said, okay, I got us involved in this thing, and I know we only have $5,000 in our banking account, but we're either gonna really make a big splash or we're gonna go down really big. So we took $1,000 and we took out an ad in American Theater Magazine, and we said, Anne Bogart comes to LA for the first time, $300, 2 weeks, et cetera, et cetera. And we got 100 students, and we got a grant for $10,000, and we got all this stuff donated, and it was an amazing success. And the year later, we did it again. And that was all done with us just saying, we're kind of depressed and we really want some inspiration, and what can we do to bring this famous person that we don't know to Los Angeles? And all you have to do is ask the question, how much would it take How does the math work out? Are other people interested? And advertise. So that led me to being at ASK Theater Project some more, and at some point I looked around and I realized that the people who funded this organization were in their 80s. And there was no endowment for ASK Theater Projects, which was a really amazing group, an amazing time in Los Angeles. For those of you who remember, there was a real center because they had a bunch of money and they could bring actors together and playwrights together and create beautiful work. But these people who wrote the checks every year were in their 80s. And I knew that they were going to die. And that meant that I was going to be unemployed. And at this point, I was 38 years old, and I don't know about those of you, but I wasn't wanting to settle for minimum wage. I wanted maximum wage. And I think as artists and creative people, we should all strive for maximum wage. And at that time, I was not getting it. And I was pretty sure I was going to be unemployed. So I said to my friends, I need a new profession. I don't know what it is. When you figure it out, please come and tell me. And I think the only person who did come and say anything to me is actually in the audience. Randy Trapitz, thank you very much, recommended me for a job at Disney. And I thought, oh, she said, I recommended you for a job as a development executive. And I remember saying, well, there's no way that they would ever hire me, but okay, great. And they did hire me. Thank you, Randy. And then I spent the next 17 years basically approaching my work in animation from a theater perspective, which was I don't know anything about animation and I don't know anything about story development, but I used to be an actor, and actors know that characters have a motivation, that characters have obstacles, that actors have to figure their way around the obstacle. And lo and behold, that is actually the same fundamental of storytelling. So I became a really good development executive, and I pretty much lied and faked my way through that until one day I decided, oh, I should be a producer. And I had a meeting with Jeffrey Katzenberg, and I said, I want to be a producer, even though I have no experience. And he, for some reason, thought, okay, I'll let you be one. So this is a long way of saying that, yes, we all want to be creative people. I wanted a life in the theater. What I ended up with was a theatrical life. And now I'm working on a theater project in London that's Shrek-based, albeit, but I found out on Friday that 18,000 tickets have been sold. So that means that I'm working on a theater project where 18,000 tickets have just been sold, and I never imagined in my life that I would do that. And if I had written my life 20 years ago or 25 years ago, I would never be able to write the story that led me to this moment where I get to do this cool-ass theater project in London. So what I'm trying to invite you to do at this moment of somewhat turmoil in Los Angeles is to think out of the box. Because we are not New York City, we are Los Angeles. And this is a town where we have stage, we have movies, we have television, we have web series, and this is a time of great change in entertainment altogether. When I am on other panels for animation or film, I often have people in the audience, and often young people ask me, well, what's the future, et cetera. And I always say the same thing, which is, anybody who's on a panel is the past. The future is in the audience, and you should be determining what your future is and what theater in Los Angeles will look like. And you shouldn't be worried about what the rules are from another East Coast institution somewhere telling you what it is. You have to look outside of the box, and if it were me, don't tell anyone, but if it were me and I had a theater company, which I do, I would call it, I'm making a movie. And I would get my rights from SAG to do this low-budget movie. And then I would do a Kickstarter, and I would sell tickets to my movie that has live rehearsals, and I'm making this up, and I would invite them as investors to these private performances that I have cleared through SAG because it's a fucking movie. So that's what I would do. Or I would come up with some lying, cheating, out-of-the-box way to do it. So I don't know what your ideas are out there, but this is Los Angeles. And if you've read the New York Times magazine last weekend, it said all the cool people are leaving New York City to move to the east side of Los Angeles because that's where all the cool art is. So congratulations, you are here and you don't have to move from Williamsburg.
Good afternoon, and here I am again, bringing it today almost full circle. I was asked today to talk to you in this last 10 minutes or so to reflect back on what I've heard today as I've experienced this meeting today. It may be worth noting before I actually move into this, as I sometimes do, what is it that I didn't hear? I did not hear anybody say, I wish there were more artists at work in LA. I did not hear anybody say, I wish our work were better. I didn't hear anybody say, I wish that we were more courageous or that we risked more, as examples. But I heard through that omission an implicit yet unarticulated conviction that your work is important at its best, it's exciting, it's challenging, which I'll return to later, but both by your career commitments that you do what you do for a living and by your choice to be here today, this is something that you have decided is worth giving your life to. I was asked to measure your listening largely through the listening board out front, which asks you to define one wish you have for the future of theater in LA. And by its very nature of wishing, of course, that implies that it asks us to articulate those things for the future that we have yet to call into being. As I read the board and tried to make sense of the disparate wishes that I saw, I thought things really came into four specific areas with one distinctive outlier. Area number one, diversity in its broadest sense, generational, racial, and gender more specifically articulated out front, to which I could also add issues like including but not limited to physical ability, sexual orientation, religion, political party, and both education level and economic class, remembering that the major predictors still in the United States of whether someone will go to the theater is the amount of money they have in a college degree. No matter who your target audience or market or community or group is, and each of those terms brings with it a different connotation, we as an arts community, I think we all acknowledge, have yet to fully reach the full diversity of the community in which we live and work, and to attract the full diversity of that community to our workforce, as evidenced by our fairly but not uniformly monogamous makeup today. Secondly, issues around audiences and community, the greatest reach, which to me, when you say audiences represents a transactional, community, however, represents a more relational, and both those terms were used frequently on the board, which harkens me to a more expanded sense, perhaps, of what we might think about this for the future. As a side note, I just wanted to note, Mark Bamuti Joseph, an artist I admire greatly who works in the Yerba Buena Center, has decided to sidestep this whole division around audience and community by saying, literally, as I think about this now, I don't think of audience anymore. I've discarded that entire word. I think instead now of what I call intentional community design. And what that means for me is sometimes I need a group of people dancing with me. Sometimes I need people on the other end of a game console playing games with me. Sometimes I need a discussion group helping me understand civic issues. And yes, sometimes I need people seated in seats who have paid admission to watch me on a stage behind a proscenium. But rather than thinking only in terms of audience, which inclines me one direction, I think of my future as intentional community design. Issue 3 on your board was funding, the desire for more money. Not a surprising issue for all of us in the arts. A thread that I heard especially reinforced on the session about boards, where there are a number of questions that reflected frustration with funder mindsets, unresponsive attitudes, and limited understanding in the funding community. And fourth, I heard the recognition issue. The sense that the community here is less recognized or seen as less vital than sports and the film industry, and also that it's insufficiently recognized by other theaters, communities in the United States. An issue that especially resonated, perhaps, with those who said in reference to the 99-seat controversy that they wish equity understood LA theater community better. The one outlier that I saw was someone who wished to go to the festival. I wish to go to the festival. The King's Festival? So, no, that was just out there. Okay. Now, The board, however, for me is just one way to hear the substance of today. And by the substance of the dialogue and the tenor of the conversation, I think I actually heard more about your time together. In most sessions, if you've got a musical ear, you can sort of hear things in keys, even if you don't understand the particular words. And in virtually every session I heard major key conversations, a sense of energy, a sense of curiosity, rather than morbid self-flagellation, and a sense of wanting more, as virtually every session that I saw ran over its allotted time. I heard hunger for useful, actionable ideas, whether that was manifested through the frustration I heard at the breakout of the data in the CDP questions and the many questions of how that could be mined better, and hunger for that, through the questions I heard in Matt Lerman's audience session about what specifically a leader with limited time and resources could achieve, or the board session where people were palpably curious about how to find board members, how to animate board members, and how to harness the energy of boards with a real emphasis on practical solutions. That said, I also, quite frankly, and this made me happiest of all, I heard laughter. Even around the 99-seat issue this morning, by Brian's gracious introductory remarks, there was laughter at this particular issue, and which to me says that coming out of one of the most fractious, difficult, divisive, potentially even toxic experiences this community has had, there is resonance and readiness in this group to listen, to heal, and to move the community forward. I hope you'll allow me to spend just a couple minutes in closing my time with you, given many of these impulses, to share a particular favorite story of mine. And I'm going to, because of my theater focus this morning in my introductory remarks and keynote, I wanted to actually close and share with you a story of a dance company that I love above all others in many sense in the United States, and to try to translate its implication for theaters in Los Angeles and your wishes on the board. The dance company I'd like to talk about today is a dance company that no longer exists, called the Trey McIntyre Project, which was founded in 2008, just in time for the economic collapse in, of all places, Boise, Idaho. Trey, a choreographer that some of you know, had worked for Boston Ballet, Houston Ballet, Portland Ballet in Oregon, and more. And after several years of a pickup company during the summer season, said, I want a full-time company of my own. Major donors in virtually every one of those cities said, you come to us, we will give you a building, we will write checks, we are going to make this happen. And as I've already alluded, Trey instead deliberately elected to go to Boise, Idaho, a town of less than 200,000 people, 550-mile drive from the next major urban center, and one without a history of dance, in its modern dance especially, in its community at all. Once Trey arrived, they announced their presence not by billboards and flyers and mailers, but by what Trey called Spurbans, spontaneous urban events, where if you were seated downtown in the lunch district of Boise at high noon on a Friday, suddenly dancers would arrive from 7 different directions, go for 3 minutes, and then split the way they'd come, leaving everybody in town going, what the hell was that? They launched their first performance not in a traditional venue, but in a drive-in movie theater. A drive-in movie theater where they encouraged the audience to come and tailgate and drink beer. That performance began not with a dance, but a video film that Trey had shot and made. He's also an extraordinary visual artist. And that film was not about Trey, it was not about dance, it was not about the history of contemporary choreography. In that film, every member of the dance company took a step forward into camera focus and said, this is why I love Boise. A reversal of the traditional expectation that artists have about we should love them, instead of every artist saying, this is why we love Boise, a reverse dynamics that had every member of that audience eating out of their hands before the dancer danced the first step. They began to make work with and for the Basque immigrant community, which was a healthy sector there, but had been previously overlooked. And when it came time for their first fundraiser, they reached out to the visual arts community and said, we invite you to create an artwork that harmonizes with our theme for the next season. We'll auction it off at the silent auction that follows. You'll actually keep the lion's share. We'll take a small cut. So rather than entering into a community and dividing the funding, they sought to grow the funding for everyone. In one of my they began to increase curiosity as they toured, and Trey continued to tour, by simply following the example of sports teams and dressing together in common sweats so that when they would travel 10 or 12 at a time, strangers in airports would say, "Who are you people? What do you do?" And they found major donors and major adherents in other communities who were excited by those airport conversations. And my favorite earned revenue strategy of all, they reached out to the local bar, which is that high-end bar. You know, it's the one that's got the mixologist who makes like martinis with muddled cucumbers and basil-infused vodka. I mean, it's that place. And they convinced the bartender to create a different signature drink each drink named for a different member of the dance company. Not only was that a smart strategy because suddenly everybody in town knew the dancers by name, it became an event to try to drink your way through the company, which I could not do on my visit. And half of the price of every drink sold went back to the company. Most importantly, I think of all, was they never articulated an arts agenda. They articulated a civic agenda, that Boise would be a world home for innovation, an effort that was led by 4 people, a .com CEO, the sheriff, the football coach of Boise State, and the managing director of the Trey McIntyre Project, a cross-sector collaboration that they later wrote about in a book called Wise Beyond Your Field, which I would urge you all to recommend you to read. And in the wake of that, they convinced the city council to make a $300,000 award and make them the economic ambassadors to the world for Boise, taking businessmen with them as they went to the Philippines or Shanghai or New York City, as if to say, you think you know what Boise is, this is Boise, and introducing them to others. What was most startling about their creation of that was they specified when the award was created that they would do it for 2 years only, and then it had to be handed off to another arts organization. A way of saying this can't be about a single organization, it is about us all. And not surprisingly, just 3 years after they had arrived in Boise, they arrived at the airport, at a city that had had no modern dance, no arts council and more, to find the city had erected a banner over the airport saying, "Good luck, Trey McIntyre Project, Boise's cultural economic ambassadors to the world." Make no mistake about this. Trey is a deeply committed artist dedicated to dance of the highest order, and they toured 30 weeks a year, deeply committed to the concert format. But at every step, Trey had the courage to ask where, why, with whom, for whom, and with what support the dance work could be made. I share this with you not because I'm naive enough to think that Los Angeles is Boise. Clearly it's not. And many of the things that I've just shared with you may not be particularly useful here. But ultimately, I would urge you to consider the following. Especially as he moved forward, Trey at all times thought about the community writ large. Yes, this was a dance company that would be at the center of making Boise the home for world innovation. And yes, we thought about the civic agenda, not the arts agenda. But he also thought about the arts community, seeking to bind us together, seeking to share resources, whether through the arts auction or whether through the cultural economic ambassadors. Barry Nailbuff of the Yale School of Management has drawn the distinction in successful business communities by saying, look, you've got a choice in an environment of either fixed or shrinking resources to compete, or you can, what he calls, co-optate. You can cooperate to grow the pie for everyone, even while it's inevitable you will compete for a piece of it. As we move forward as an arts community, we have the choice of whether we will compete for a piece of a fixed or shrinking pie, or whether we will wish to co-optate to grow the pie, and I mean the financial pie, the intellectual pie, the audience pie, and the human resource pie for us all. The Alliance, I think especially at this moment of leadership change, can move forward best if it helps us all think cooperatively rather than competitively. For as I suggested this morning, in this world today, a world that I would say to you is marked by increased division at the national, cultural, racial, and religious and political levels, marked by higher and higher intolerance, a world in which we face global warming and rising economic inequality, We need to reawaken in our country not only our deepest imaginations for how we will solve this, but we need to reanimate public space to pull together people who are interested in understanding life other than as it is being lived, our single greatest gift as artists, and give us the space to socialize. The single thing people tell us they value most about our work, giving us space where they can find common bond, celebrate, and to conspire. And for those of you who know your Latin, you know that conspire means to breathe together. Especially in a world where technology increasingly allows us and encourages us to breathe alone in the privacy of our own home or on our own devices, we need to call people to breathe the same air. What we should know from today is the sum of what we know in aggregate is greater than the sum of what any one of us knows individually. What we can command in aggregate is greater than what we can command individually. The impact we can make on the world who calls for us today in sum is greater than what we can do individually. God forgive us if we do not heed that call. Thank you and Godspeed.
Hi, guys. Can I just ask for another round of applause for all of our afternoon speakers, Maestro Gamin, Karen Foster, and Ben Cameron. I hope you've enjoyed the day, and I challenge you a week from today, put it on your calendar, set an alert, make it remind you. Have you reached out to that person you thought today I should talk to again? Have you looked up that program or that website or that company that kind of just got you there? I challenge you, do it. If you haven't done it from a week from today, send the email, go to the website, do it. That's what today's about. It's about connecting with each other, keeping the conversations going. Hashtag LA Stage Day. And I wanted just to echo again what Brian Kite, our board chair, said earlier today. LA Stage Day is not just the speakers that we bring here together, the panelists, and they are wonderful and inspiring, but it's what each of you bring here today. It's what each of you take, and it's what each of you share and continue to share. So continue to share. So this concludes 2015 LA Stage Day. I wanted to thank our hosts one more time, Cal State LA, Meredith Greenberg in particular for her support. Without them, we couldn't do this here. And we have cookies and juice, so let's hang out, let's chat, and thank you for coming.